So there's a global pandemic. It's Mad Max Fury Road out there. We're traveling down the highway in our gasoline-filled vehicles looking for Aqua-Cola and running from Immortan Joe. Playing guitars, fire going everywhere. Or it's getting close. Maybe that's what you wish the apocalypse looked like. Too bad, it's just a bunch of sick people and the country on fire. Hey everybody, welcome to Staring at Goats. We'll be your guides today as we drive this taxi across this hellish landscape. I'm Steven, joined as always by the wonderful Jacob, and this week, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to be greeted with the wonderful vocals of our special guest, TV's Travis. Hello, TV's Travis.
Well, hello. How are you fine gentlemen doing tonight?
We are great. I speak for Jacob sometimes. We work as a hive mind. It's like Bill and Ted, you know.
Wait, I was trying to find you on the screen. No, high five. No, high five.
Over here.
You gotta go up. You gotta go down.
Look how cool we are. We can't even do high fives in virtual life. No, we're so glad to have TV's Travis here. Travis, we have been internet friends for a while now, 6 months to a year-ish, probably.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say. It feels
Sounds about
like we've known each other for quite a while, and I think you're a wonderful person to help join us in ushering in this new format that we're going for here on Staring at Goats. We're bringing a guest from somewhere that's not here, that isn't me and Jacob in the state of North Carolina, to give us a little bit of perspective on everything that's going on. So Travis, where roundabouts are you located?
So I live in Michigan. I live in northern lower Michigan because it's a place that you have to use two directional words to find.
Yes.
If you look at anybody from Michigan will tell you can look at your left hand, and right where the pinky and the middle, the ring finger meet, that's about where I live.
Oh, okay.
At the end, at the tip.
Okay, gotcha.
So, yes.
In the mitten there. That's pretty awesome.
Yep.
Well, welcome to the show. As always, if you're new to the show, we're going to talk about COVID-19. We're going to talk about news. We're going to talk about where we're at, how we're doing, and we're going to wrap it all up with some predictions and some deep dives into some conversations that we wanted to have. And we're very, very happy for Travis to be here. I want to probably open it with our roundtable as we always do. And Travis, you being the guest of honor, would you care to go first on how you're doing?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm adjusting. It's a new normal that I have to adjust to now. And I am slowly but surely coming to grips with the fact that things aren't going to go back to the way they were. That's just not an option anymore. We have to really, and truthfully, that's just how life is. Like, it's a constant evolution. We always talk about getting back to normal, but really normal is always ever changing. So, this is the new way that we have to change things up, and I'm getting there. I'm adjusting to working from home, which was different for me. I've never had a job that's allowed for that. My dog loves it because he hates me leaving the house for anything ever. So he's super thrilled. I miss seeing other humans at times. And I'm slowly working that back into things with the proper precautions being taken with a circle of friends, of people that I trust, that I know have been, safe and taking care of themselves. So, yeah, I mean, it's just a day by day process.
So here's a question: what pre-COVID behavior that you exhibited do you miss the most? I mean, you obviously, you talk about how you're at home more and you work from home now and you miss people, but there was something that you used to do pre-COVID that you can't do now. What is it?
Right now, the first thing that comes to mind is heading to the gym and playing basketball with some friends of mine. I had a group of guys that for the last probably 5 or 6 years with this particular group, we've met every Sunday, save a couple of months in the summer when everyone's out on their boats, and play basketball Sunday mornings from like 10 a.m. to noon. And it was a great way to get up, get out of the house, go get some exercise, see some guys I only see once or twice a week at most. And it's the same gym that I've been going to and playing basketball in for 20 years. So this was
Oh,
just a
wow.
different subset of people. I used to play anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week at this gym, depending on job schedules and school schedules and all that. But
That's right.
so it was something that I did a lot, and I have touched a basketball once since March, and it kills me because
Yeah,
it's
that's
something that I
tough.
just enjoy doing.
Yeah.
We had
Now,
we had one yeah,
go
we
ahead.
had one get together for somebody's birthday. And it was all outdoors, and we didn't play so much as we did some like shooting drills, and that was as
Mm,
close as I've gotten to anything.
Yeah. Now, is your gym opening up? I know that some states are taking that next step to open up their gyms. Is Michigan one of those states?
Well, Michigan might be, but our gym is not. So the gym that I go to is run by the local community college, and actually we just got word that the college, it's Northwestern Michigan College, NMC, and NMC is not going to open up the gym this fall at all.
Oh wow.
So, and we were just like a community driven one. We had an agreement with them for use of the gym. We'd pay them X number of dollars per semester. So we would just collect money, and then at the end of the semester, one of us writes a check. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do it. So a lot of people have been playing outdoors all summer, um, which I know basketball is one of the activities that's not a great one during a pandemic
No,
because it's a
probably
lot
not.
of close contact,
Mhm.
which is why I haven't gone to the outdoor courts to play yet, because those people I just don't know where they've been.
Yeah.
But
Don't you
yeah,
love
it's
saying
not
that about
happening.
people that you don't know? I don't know where that person's been. Like you used to say it about a stray dog. Now we're looking at
Yeah,
people going,
exactly.
"Where you been?" And that's
Yeah,
normal.
unfortunately, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I hope that that's something that can be returned to at some point. Just because for me, it was a great kind of excuse to get out of the house. It was I am terrible at working out for the sake of working out. I've always been like that. I'm not good at just going to the gym and lifting weights or riding a bike,
get
stationary
swole.
bike or anything like that. It's hard to motivate myself to do it. But when I can work in an activity, whether it's mountain biking or trail running or basketball, baseball, softball, whatever, then I can be active all day long.
Mhm.
So that's the thing I'm hoping to get back to.
Well, what about like just everyday activities? I mean, you talk about, oh shoot, I'm not going to get into these kind of close contact activities and play basketball, but how comfortable are you with just your routine everyday activities? Things like going to the grocery store or going to the hardware store, going maybe out to eat or picking up food or going to Starbucks. How comfortable are you with those kind of activities?
I have been pretty comfortable. I keep an eye on kind of caseload of like, are there cases being found in my area? I mean, where I'm at is fairly rural. The
Hmm.
closest, what you would call city, is really Grand Rapids, which is about 150 miles south of me. 100,
Wow.
150 miles south. It's like a solid 2+ hour drive to get there. So where
Hey,
I'm at, it's not super.
that was the last place that I was at before the world shut down. Was
Yeah,
just
that's right.
outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Probably at Gerald R. Ford Airport.
That's right, baby.
So because we're fairly rural and just not densely populated, I feel okay when I go out because our town, my hometown set up the like our downtown area as pedestrian traffic only, on a couple of blocks that used to be car traffic, so that all the stores down there could have all the restaurants could have street seating, and the stores could open up and move out into the streets and space things out. And for the most part, I would say that people have been pretty good about keeping distance, wearing masks when they're out. I'm always prepared, and I try to time my trips to places at less busy times too, which
Mm.
helps. I mean, there's still idiots walking around with their mask, here, so their nose is hanging out, like, and I mean, the nice thing about having to wear a mask all the time and wearing a hat a lot and sunglasses is I can just roll my eyes and make fun of these people and they don't know.
That's
So
right.
I don't
There
have to
you
worry
go.
about confrontation either.
Steven loves those
And
people. He loves
Yeah,
them.
they just infuriate me to no end. It's worse than if they just weren't wearing a mask because I know that they at least
right,
know better and they're just choosing to be obstinate.
yeah. Like the people that wear it and they stop it here, or they just wear it on their chin.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like you're not even putting in the token effort at that point. That stuff does bug me. But I don't see it as often. I'm seeing it less and less, and I'm seeing people just be a little bit more courteous. And then as far as like getting food, either picking it up or having it delivered, DoorDash has been great when I've had to use it, and they're great about keeping distance. In fact, I used it the other day, and then I was standing outside with my dog when she showed up with my food, and I'd had leave it by the side door, and she gets out of the car, just kind of looking at me, kind of walk over with the food. She goes, do you want me to just leave this by the door, or do you want to take it? I'm like, I'll just here, give it here. She had her mask on. I was like, that's fine. But no, I think overall I'm fairly comfortable. I'm also a pretty laid back guy, so
Yeah.
I don't try to let too much bother me.
Yeah.
And especially things that are outside of my control. I can't control anybody else. But if I can take the proper precautions, make sure that I'm, wearing a mask when I go out in public, making sure that I'm cleaning things, that I'm cleaning my hands, that I'm taking care of my stuff. I can't control what anyone else does. Hopefully they are too, but it's not worth the wasting the energy to get upset about all of it. If I see somebody walking around with their doodle hanging out of their mask, then yeah, I'm going to make fun of them. But
As you should. Has anybody around you been affected by COVID-19, either friends or immediate family or anything?
nobody that I know has been diagnosed with it. I had a friend that did have to get a test because an acquaintance of her sister's who had been around suddenly tested positive, so she had to. But outside of that, no. It's been really pretty sparse in this area overall.
Okay.
We've probably
Yeah,
had
that's
more
good.
issues with confrontations at stores over wearing a mask than I have heard of actual people being sick.
Yeah, I was gonna get to that because you are in Michigan, and Michigan seemed like it was going to be the birthplace of the second revolution there for a hot minute.
That's right.
And I was wondering how, like, how we always look at when we hear the words New York, we automatically assume New York City, even though there's just tons and tons of land that is not New York City, but you just hear New York's a disaster zone, and you think the whole state. Like, locally has it been like, oh my word, the militia's walking the streets, or has all that kind of calmed down over time?
That never really got bad here.
Yeah.
Like again, we're so far north. A lot of that was at the state capitol and all of the downstate areas where Detroit, Lansing, Grand Rapids are. So I'm far enough away from that for the most part I don't really have to deal with it, because all the
Yeah.
crazy militia people here are 30 miles away from another soul living on their own land. They're the middle of nowhere. So
If they all piled together and got together in a 10-mile radius, all 18 of them would show up.
exactly. Yep.
I know. Hey, I
Right.
grew up there. I know.
Yep.
Yeah.
Not in Michigan, but I grew up in the same kind of town.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, yeah. I'm glad that it seems like it's going pretty good in your town at least, and like I think I'm noticing in my experience more people wearing masks, and I was looking at some charts, and it seems like mask acceptance has trickled upwards. Mask use and acceptance of wearing masks has trickled upwards. People that were stalwarts of anti-mask are kind of like, well, it's almost like they're hearing the argument repeatedly, or they're hearing the repeated argument that this isn't for you, it's for others. And that seems to be cracking some of these hard shells where people were like, my rights. Now they're going, oh, well, yeah, it's not going to kill me to watch out for Joe over there who might have, some immune problem.
I mean, my family is, so not to get too political, but my family is very conservative, and I'm kind of not. So I sort of end up as the black sheep in terms of a lot of that. And a lot of their friends are too. So I've been at my parents' house, say, for my dad's birthday, and some of their friends would show up. And admittedly, the conversations were kind of tough because we had some of the, oh, COVID's a hoax talk going on. And I'm sitting behind all of this with, just I can't roll my eyes any further, or I'll go blind. And just try, and even them, I'm seeing my parents were not ever like anti-mask. Like even my dad, who would complain, well, when I have to walk across the store, it's a lot harder for me to breathe. I'm like, well, that's probably not because of the mask. That's probably because you're in your 60s and you've had a heart attack. Like, I love you, Dad, but neither of us are in the best shape anymore, kind of thing. But they're the same way. It's one of those where I can kind of explain to them, like, I know you don't like it, but it's a small price to pay. And if you really can't do it, almost everywhere around here is being very good about curbside pickup and order ahead type stuff too. So that's helped a lot, I think, as that has become more normal for people to do and more prevalent and easier to do.
Yeah.
The toughest conversations are with the people who go, come November, I bet this COVID stuff is going to go away. And the only thing you could say is, oh, dear Lord.
I just walked away from one that happened to me, and I was just like, yeah. Like, what do you got? Like, there's nothing there's nowhere to go from there.
Right. Yeah. How do you follow that up? You don't. You just cut bait and walk away.
Yeah, because you don't want to get into that conversation with everybody because it's so messy now. Like, it's just you can't.
Well, it's so messy. Yeah, it's so messy. It's just exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
You get into that conversation, and all you're doing is saying the same things over and over.
Yeah,
and you end up being Leela and Fry from that episode of Futurama.
Jacob and I had that conversation.
She's an infinite loop, and he's an idiot, and you're just like, oh, okay, I need to go lie down.
Jacob and I had that conversation with that dude in West Virginia, and Jacob was trying his hardest to get through with some I thought were very good points. I mean, obviously, I got an implicit bias walking in because I like Jacob and I like the way he thinks, but it seemed to me pretty reasonable arguments. But what came back was just another statement. Well, I just believe this. And you're like, well, I guess when we're talking about belief, it's hard to, I'm not going to convince you otherwise. If we're talking facts and figures, there's something to grab onto. But if we're just talking about what we believe all day, I can't break through that. That's a different conversation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, you can change an idea from somebody, but a belief is hard to change.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's definitely a whole different ball of wax. But Jacob, how you doing? Where you at this last week?
Man, where am I at this week? So we've been discussing vacations. And we've been discussing going to the beach. And we're like, okay, well, if we rent a house and we try to do the cleaning that's necessary and try to bring all the stuff that we want and blah, 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 we should be able to make it okay. And then we started looking for places to rent. And oh my word, I don't think I've ever seen beach houses rented like this. I mean, you can't find beach houses right now to rent in the Outer Banks. And the only ones that you can find are, number one, they're not what anybody is looking for. They're the houses that very few people would actually enjoy staying at. And number two, they're still overpriced. And you look at it and you go, this is not, you pay this kind of money for a quality place or a quality vacation and you would not receive it. So I'm looking at it going, why is this? Because I'm looking at the economy and I'm going, the stock market's up, but nothing else is going right. You've got employees, just the airline industry is just absolutely getting hammered right now. What did American Airlines just announced? 19,000 layoffs. Companies are starting to really lay people off in massive numbers. Are we just ignoring what's happening around us? Are we just saying, well, the stock market's good and, I'm working from home and my company's doing all right and they're not going to lay me off, I don't think. So I'm just going to go work from the beach, just go on vacation. I mean, what are we doing here? Are we ignoring signs that are in front of us, that are kicking us right in the teeth? And we're just like, I didn't need that tooth anyway. I'm trying to understand what's going on because the fundamentals don't change about our economy. And what's happening is definitely screwing up with, I just don't understand what people are thinking right now. And if anybody else can enlighten me out there on what people are actually thinking, I'd love to hear it because I just don't understand what's happening.
I think what we're seeing here is Rocky Balboa. I need you to imagine for a moment Sylvester Stallone in his American flag trunks fighting the Russian. we're going to consider, well, no, not even the Russian. Let's just pick Apollo Creed. And he's going to fight him. And Apollo Creed is COVID-19. And Rocky's getting beat to death. But he just keeps getting back up because he's like, got to keep moving. Punch, 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 punch. I'm going to keep going. I mean, eventually, Rocky loses by the cards. But dagnabbit, if he's just not going to keep walking forward and stay on his feet. And I think that's America at this point in time. Is we're not Apollo Creed right now like we're used to being. We're Rocky. We got a lot of heart, but we're still taking a lot of big hits. And I don't know where the cards are going to land at the end. Are the judges going to say, hey, you pushed through and you won? Or are they going to be like, dagnabbit, you lost, but you got a career? Come back next time.
It's really funny that you use the Rocky analogy because I was going to use a different boxer.
Who are you going
like a
for?
real life boxer. His name is Randall Tex Cobb. I just talked about him this week in the movie Raising Arizona, but he was a pro boxer prior to being an actor, and he was in such a bad one-sided boxing match that Howard Cosell swore off calling boxing matches afterwards because of how badly he got beat, but he never went down. And that's kind of where we're at right now. Like, we're just defiant about some of this stuff because it's right in our face that things are just collapsing and burning around us. And you have half the people are like, I don't care, I don't see it. And the other half of the people do care, but you get cooped up for so long that you need to change something. You need to do something different. So that's where I think a lot of the like vacation rental stuff comes from. Is half of that is people that just are going to do it no matter what.
They
don't care what's going on. And the other half are the people that have been trying to be smart and be safe, but want to try and go like you're doing close to home, but still get away, do something that they can space out at. Cause nobody's going to hotels or big resorts because you're not going to do that. Like, I'm not going to go to a resort where there's a community pool because that's just a petri dish on a good day. So
it's the for only time in history where we've preferred outdoor room hotels if we got to have one, because going inside and getting on an elevator indoors is actually not safe. Every time, I mean, you pull up to an outdoor room hotel, you all of a sudden feel shifty, like my room's exposed to the
no-tell motel,
right? Or I mean, even if it's decent, even if you go to a Hampton Inn and for whatever reason they bought an older hotel that has outdoor rooms, you're still like, that Hampton's got outdoor rooms. I don't know. I don't feel safe there. But Jacob, let me ask you this. Who are we in the scenario Travis just brought up? Like, what is driving us to the beach? Like, if you want to ask, like, what are people doing? Are they ignoring? Who are we in that situation?
I actually think we have a little different scenario. I think we're dealing with some health issues and some family health issues, and we're trying to make sure we accommodate certain members of our family and some of what they're going through. So I feel like there's an element of that. I feel like there's an element of we're going to do it as a family. We're not going to do it with other people. It's something that we've always done, and we're going to find a rental. We could still work from remotely, so we don't have to take off school. We don't have to take off work. It's not as impactful for us. And we get to accommodate some of these family issues. So that's kind of where I'm leaning toward. We'd probably be that group in that scenario. I'm sure clearly I don't think we're the ones who are ignoring what's going on, but
no. But I think in a normal year, like in a normal situation, you'd be fine because there'd be so many people that are booking at hotels and staying there that these Airbnbs and these vacation rentals wouldn't be nearly as in demand. But everybody that's going is looking for that so that they can stay safe and separated. And the demand has gone through the roof, and they ain't making more of them. So, I mean, you only got so much land to deal with. So
actually, I do have something on the hotels. My mother actually drove up to Minneapolis because she wasn't going to get on a plane and fly up to Minneapolis to see her sister, and so she drove and spent the night halfway through the drive at a hotel. And she said she was one of 5 cars in the parking lot, 5. And that
Wow.
includes the employees. And she said she talked to the lady at the front desk, and apparently nobody was there. And she was talking about how nobody was there. But what they do is they rotate wings, and they have 3 different wings. And so they put everybody in this one wing on one given night. And then the next night they switch it and they put them in a different wing and let the other one get cleaned out and air out. And then the third night they switch everybody over to the third wing and then let the second and the first one get cleaned out and aired out. And then they come back. So it's like they rotate to 3 different areas per every third night. And so no room actually gets stayed in for the 2 nights in between. Which is as safe as you could possibly be, because if you look at the contact survivability of COVID-19, it's pretty low at 48 hours. I mean, it's almost negligible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's you get to where you have those conversations early on where it's like this thing lives for 3 days on metal surfaces, and it's like, well, it does, but the concentration by that point is so low. The actual possibility of you getting it is reduced to almost nothing. Because I mean, I know a lot of us were like, it lives on plastic for days, and we're gonna die, and it's like, nah, well, in a lab in these conditions, it lives, but like at such a small amount. But yeah, we've always gone on vacation this time of year, and I think we're just trying to make it happen again. And yeah, I mean, for me, it's a little bit of an escapism, kind of. Like, if anything, we've been cooped up for a really long time, and it's kind of nice to think, like, why don't we just go? We're all working from home. Sam's homeschooling now. There's literally nothing tying us here except this daggone virus that's out there somewhere. And it's kind of given me this whole perspective of we should go places because like not in COVID, but just in life in general. Sitting around in the same place you are all the time. Like, I've never seen the Grand Canyon. I'd like to go there. I should go there. And like
North Rim or the South Rim, because this is an important question.
Either rim, some rims, outer rim.
Nope.
Really, I'd prefer the outer rim. Travis thought that was
Well, one
he got it.
Yeah, one that I'm interested in, and my parents are going to be camping this weekend, so I'm kind of curious to see what that's like.
Yeah.
Because that's something that you can do and you're separated usually. I think the way this campsite and campground is going to work, because it's a state run campground. I think what they're doing is like every third site is rentable.
Oh,
But
that's
I'm
good.
curious to see how full that is, because I know a lot of times in the summer those campgrounds are full anyway.
Yeah.
But if it's an easy way to get away from things, that's why my dad bought a camper, just so he could take weekends and just him and my mom can take off and leave the house and be gone for 3 or 4 days at a stretch and go see somewhere different.
You know,
So
I never even thought about campgrounds because they pack those guys in like sardines in campgrounds. I've been to many, many, many campgrounds growing up, and holy crap! I mean, they're on top of each other almost, especially at some of the highly populated areas. So yeah,
some of them,
I'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them up here are a little bit more spread out, and it's just because it's such a forested area
Yeah, that's
that it's a
true.
little easier to do. But yeah, I'll report back with what I find out, because I'm going to definitely go check it out.
Yeah, give us some info. Definitely, it's almost maybe we should just get that Airstream and hook it to the back of the truck and roll out. That'd be pretty great.
There you go.
But just to move on to where I'm at.
Yeah, where are you at?
Short story. Homeschool is awesome. It's the greatest decision we've ever made in our adult lives as parents. It's changed everything. The kid done with his work in an hour and a half, loves it. It's tailor-made to what he needs right now and where he's excelling. We do a quick review, we pass over it, we go work on handwriting and reading, because that's a place he needs to bump up his skills. And it's been, oh man, talking him into it in the morning and getting like, it's school time is kind of a nightmare. But once he sits down, like he's laying on the floor next to his mom, they're just wherever they want to be, doing the school thing, and it's super cool, man. It has opened my eyes to possibilities. I don't know if we'll continue this past COVID, but I will say that it's been very successful the last 3 days that we've done it. Now, I mean, that is 3 days, so let's, I don't want to toot my horn too early, but so far it's feeling pretty positive. Stephanie's having a blast. Stephanie's like loving it. She's sitting there like making up lesson plans and playing with ideas, of how to do this. And we're going to go outside and draw letters with sidewalk chalk. Like, there's so much more inventiveness you can have, and it exercises her creativity and helps come up with things. And I think it's
Yeah,
good for her and it's good for him. It's a bonding time for both of them. And like
Sure.
he wanted to learn about spiders, so they worked a spider lesson where it was we're gonna count the legs on the spider, count the eyes on the spider, write the word spider, learn about spiders. We're gonna learn arachnid, and it's
Hold on. So, Stephen, there's one thing that you mentioned there. You're going to count the number of legs and eyes on a spider.
yeah.
At school, they would still be on the number 2.
Right. This week was going to be numbers 3 and 4. They were going to
Ooh.
study.
They
Yeah.
still wouldn't be able to get through the number of legs on a spider.
Dude,
That's
Sam, she was sitting with him going over shapes. We learned Sam
Which is
looks
awesome.
at the world different because she wanted him to count the sides of a square and a triangle. Like, let's count them, and he's like, "Oh, there's 4." But when he counted them, he counted the vertices. He didn't count the sides. He counted the corners, which is like a really good way to count how many sides are in a
Huh.
shape. Is counting the vertices. They actually teach you that like later on. Like that's a way to do it. And he counted those without us even cluing him into that. And he looked at a triangle. He didn't even count. He just went, "There's 3. There's 4." You know, it's just like we're learning shapes are really great with him and numbers. He's got like he knows the order your numbers go in up to a point. You know, so like
Well,
we
you
just
mentioned in the past, Stephen,
Mhm.
that you don't think the whole idea of school with, like age kids is always the best option.
right, yeah,
And I kind of get that, especially at Sam's age,
yeah,
right? Because I think when you're young like that and you're just a sponge, self-paced learning can be so much more beneficial. Like at some point, you do need social interaction. You
yeah,
do need to get along with other people, and that'll come. But at 5, 6, 7 years old, you're going to learn and retain so much more if you're able to do it at your own pace. And on top of that, he's got his mom who's able to get excited and create lessons that are tailor made for him
yeah,
that
yeah.
still get along, get across the stuff that he needs to learn. So I think it's really cool. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. I hope,
Yeah,
because I think it's beneficial. Granted,
yeah.
small sample size, but
I mean, I jumped into Reddit. Reddit's got a homeschool subreddit. I just wanted to see what was out there, and you wouldn't believe the posts that were in the same situation we were. Virtual learning kindergarten. They were like, I don't know what to do. It's a disaster. What do we do? We're gonna try this, and it's like post after post after post after post of every family doing the same thing. Families that were lucky enough to be in a position like we are, where the parent is already home, and that it's not that big of a switch. But I am curious to see how much of this really changes the landscape of education moving forward. Parents are getting a bigger view into what their kids are learning and how their kids are learning than we've ever had. I talked to Jacob a little bit about this yesterday. Like, were parents meant to know what was really going on at school? Like, to some degree, I think we always want to feel like we're involved and we know what the teacher's teaching and how it's being taught, but we really don't. Like, your kids are very much independent when they're at school, outside of like you get their homework or their Friday folders or whatever system they've got, and you're like, oh, okay, math, blah, 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 blah. But like you're really being in it with them, like sitting at a desk beside them while they're learning, you get a much different view. And you know your kid better than anyone will know your kid and what your kid latches onto and what they learn and how they pick things up and how they learn. And you'd be like, you're never going to get this the way they're teaching it. Like let me try to show it to you in this different mode, and then you see them all of a sudden want to drink it up because they're like, oh, I can't. Oh, thanks, Mom, for explaining that. And you get the opportunity through homework on occasion and stuff. But I mean, we're not there in kindergarten. It's just daycare more than it's a day, not daycare, but somebody watching your kid for a while and showing them stuff.
well, no, that's a great way to put it, because I went through that with my ex's son. I was around from kindergarten on through like 8th grade, and we would help with homework and with assignments, but all we got was that we were getting one page out of the book. We weren't getting the whole context,
Yeah.
so we didn't. And you find out how they're learning stuff so differently. So yeah, I'm glad that you guys were able to be in the position to do that for Sam, because I
Yeah,
think it's
for
going to
sure.
benefit him huge.
Yeah.
So I have a question
Huge.
for you that may actually spark conversation that we might not want to have on air. But do we feel like it's the parents' responsibility to teach their kids, and do we feel like potentially COVID has opened some parents' eyes to realizing that maybe it might be their responsibility?
I've always felt like it was a parent's responsibility. Like there are things that I think school provides that it's like I was talking about guitar lessons, Jacob, earlier today. I was like, I'd like to take guitar lessons, not because I don't know how to play guitar, but because I don't know what I didn't learn properly, or I don't know what to learn next. And I think school provides that structure where you're like, okay, second grade, they should be learning this. I had no idea. And if we're all just home teaching our kids, we're going to teach them what we know and kind of how we feel like they should do it. But there's school, I think education is as a system has a much broader baseline of like, this is where most kids are at this age that we know of. So that's why we teach this curriculum here because we know they can retain it. And I think to some degree it's like having a plan. Like at second grade, we attack these things where it's not to say you're making a better human or a worse human, right? Like I think at the end of the day, I don't give a flip about math. I learned the same math you learned, the same math Travis learned, the same math Kelly, whoever else in the chat learned. I don't use it. I use other things I learned in school. And a lot of that stuff is primarily how to learn and the things that I got into when I was 13, 14 that I latched onto that didn't even have anything to do with school. But somehow you still have to have some sort of drive. I don't know. I kind of lost my thought in there, but yeah, go ahead, Travis.
Well, I was just going to say something you said there is extremely important, and I think that a lot of people will gloss over it, and that is you need to learn how to learn. And that was something with Michael that I really tried to instill in him is like, look, I get that this math is kind of dumb, or you're not going to use this particular thing, but you are learning how to solve a problem. You are learning how to learn something. So let's focus on that part of it, and then the formula, because math is a formula, right?
Yeah.
So all you're doing is balancing a formula, but you figure out how you get there. So the learning how to learn, I think, is more important than anything.
Yeah.
And
Critical
everybody
thinking
does have
that
a
comes
little bit
along with it.
yeah, learning how to learn and critical thinking, and you've got to figure that out. And sometimes it works better. Certain things work better to learn on at your own pace versus in a group where you can kind of collaborate. So both I think are needed. It's just finding that balance. That's the tough part.
And for me, like I latch on to puzzle solving. Like I mean, Travis, you and I have talked about this with adventure games. Like solve a puzzle. Ooh, neat! I just solved that. I'm a freaking genius. Let me do the next one. And if they could have gamified math in that way, like I'm solving a puzzle, I'm not necessarily like just moving numbers around. It's possible I could have been better at it just out of the sheer force of will to solve the puzzle. But the way it's presented is such a slog that it's like, numbers. But I played the crap out of Math Blaster as a kid. That was awesome. That game was great. But it was it's the same content.
One of the few computer games. It's like that and Oregon Trail. And what's the others? There's two other ones.
Oh, gosh.
Number Munchers and Word Munchers. I played a lot of those.
Yes,
Word
Number
Munchers. There's another one. Yeah.
I remember that. But yeah, like those games, they took a different avenue to teach the same thing. And I think as a homeschool parent or someone independently teaching your kid in a different way, you can find those new avenues where school's going to do it the way they were known to do it. And unless you got a teacher with a lot of time, they got 24 kids in a classroom. Best of luck, unless you go like after school to have some tutor time, and to get that you have to be practically failing. There's so many different ways to learn, and shoving everybody into a room and going, you'll all learn the same way and do this it's necessary. And I understand that, and I don't want to downplay a teacher's role and everything, because my Lord, they need to be paid $1 billion. But I do think that there are downsides to that one size fits all thing. And I think most people would agree with that, but it's the only system we've got. And you've got a lot of homes where, you have parents, they don't have a high school education, or at best have one, but don't have enough to teach their kids anything further,
Plus they have to spend all their time working to keep the roof over their head and keep food and keep kids in, proper medical care and all of that. Like it's hard.
Yeah. But I don't want to think that anybody who doesn't get like the education the way they deserve it, so to speak, is like a failure. Like my grandpa went to school till eighth grade and quit and went to work, and he raised a whole family, did what he was doing. And I think that there's possibilities for that out there, It's not like it's disappeared. Not everybody needs a college degree, but that's an entirely different conversation. No. And we could go down a very deep rabbit hole with that. But we should get to the isolation report because we went through all the trouble to get all these news stories. But dagnabbit, if having new blood on the show didn't bring us a whole lot more conversation. Thank you, Travis. Let's do a couple stories here. Boop boop boop. Who does number 2 work for? Us, apparently. The University of Arizona made a bold claim this week. It stopped a coronavirus outbreak before it started. Universities around the U.S. have struggled with outbreaks as they attempt to start the fall semester, but the Likens Hall dorm, just across the street from the University of Arizona's Recreation Center, 2 students were found to have contracted the coronavirus, and they were asymptomatic. That means they weren't showing any symptoms. The university said it pulled this off by combining more common forms of coronavirus mitigation, swab testing, and contact tracing with a more exotic one, analyzing sewage. The university said it pulled this off by combining, actually, that's 2 copy-paste. Ian Pepper, who's an environmental microbiologist who is leading the wastewater testing effort, said, from one test, we get the prevalence of the virus within the whole community. The 2 cases that have been identified at the university were both asymptomatic, and Pepper said wastewater testing could be sensitive enough to detect the coronavirus up to a week before a person develops symptoms. So you have 7 precious days in which you can undergo intervention. Pretty big deal. It would take a lot to uplift all the waste sanitation plants to figure out whether they have an outbreak or not. But it's a pretty interesting exercise.
I know we read an article several episodes ago about a country that actually did this. Do you remember what country it was that was testing their wastewater?
Was it Sweden or
no, it was Mount Rushmore. That's what it was. They were trying to calculate how many people carried COVID during July 4th period that came through the Mount Rushmore parks. That's what it was.
Right. Good memory, Jacob.
Yeah, that's insane. Well, I'm glad to see that this technology is not only taking off, but they're actually using it to try to predict other things, which is, I mean, that's what it's there for, right? I mean, good.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
COVID gag rules. Employees say the biggest names in American business have banned them in the last few months. Well, doggone it, copy and paste error. In the last few months, U.S. businesses have been on a silencing spree, essentially. Hundreds of U.S. employers across a wide range of industries have been told workers are not to share information about COVID-19 cases or even raise concerns about the virus or have retaliated against workers for doing the things, according to Workplace NLRB, whatever that stands for, and of course OSHA. Workers at Amazon.com, Cargill, McDonald's, and Target say that they were told to keep these COVID cases silent. The same sort of gagging has been alleged in OSHA complaints against Smithfield Foods, Urban Outfitters, and General Electric. In an email viewed by Bloomberg this week, Delta Airlines told its 25,000 flight attendants to please refrain from notifying other crew members of your own about COVID symptoms or diagnoses. REI had an employee text colleague saying that he'd test positive and that he was told not to tell anybody or to post anything about it on social media. So he was prevented from alerting others to the coronavirus outbreak. Teachers are also getting gag orders. At the end of July, Florida prepared to resume in-person classes. The district in Jacksonville, home county of Duval, email terrible writing. This is awful.
This was a bad article.
Wow, this is horrible.
Yeah.
Any social media posting that would reflect badly, essentially, on the district's reputation may lead to disciplinary actions, according to the email. The school district says that the email wasn't meant to prevent employees from expressing views on reopening. In many of the cases, workers say their boss have cited employee privacies to justify the gags, including the federal privacy laws such as the Health Insurance Portability Act, and the Accountability Act of 1996. But such laws don't require companies to silence their employees on safety matters.
So is it a health matter or a safety matter? It depends on how you want to define it. Is an X-Men a human-like doll or something else for your tariff laws? Like, what do we, this is gross, is the bottom line, but whatever.
But if you listen to some of the names of, I mean, we're talking about Amazon and Cargill and McDonald's and Target and
REI.
Delta and Jacksonville and REI, the Jacksonville school systems. I mean, these aren't just random mom and pop stores. These are the big boys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Space helmets. All right, so Toronto-based company Visor Technologies launched its $250 BioVisor last April after raising nearly $800,000 on Indiegogo. The head-turning hazmat helmet features anti-fog windows, a low-volume battery-powered cooling fan, and hospital-grade air filters, and it makes you look like you're an extra at Dr. No on his
Pretty
arm.
cool.
That's really that's
That
awesome.
thing is crazy. It's this big bubble thing. But wait, there's more. The company says BioVisor is perfect for crowded public spaces, school and university classrooms, work, meetings, and the office. Though it's unclear how, say, a PowerPoint presentation might go over with all that distracting gear. The helmets are sold out right now, but they are accepting new orders and they're scheduled to ship at the end of September. There's also the Air by Microclimate, which makes you look like you should be probably in The Martian. Is kind of what that one reminds me of. That's got let's see, it's an acrylic visor that lets users wear glasses without interference, and also helps you look like an extra from Interstellar. Yeah. Air's acrylic visor enables an unobstructed view of the face, and it has fabric that sits around the neck. Is lightweight and washable. The ones that actually, to me, in this article, so this was a Forbes article, and the ones that looked like something that I could see people out in public wearing, and not looking like a complete dork, were the hoods that had, and these were more like custom. Let's see if I can find who the name was on this. Etsy creator artist Katya Lozanova
Yeah.
makes face shields that are into what looks like a hooded sweatshirt
hood
or a
with-
hoodie hood with a big face shield that sits in front of it.
It's got a very
Uh,
Star Wars vibe.
It does, which is why I think it's something I could see being worn out in public. The Interstellar helmet, I'm not so sure about.
No.
I really
Um,
dig the Air by Microclimate. I know I'm in the minority here, but that thing, like, that just looks stupid. But stupid in
Well,
the best way.
I mean, you didn't
Well-
even go as far as the eye sphere. It's just this one big sphere.
It's just
yeah.
a goldfish bowl.
You missed that one.
Yeah, that one was let's see, the iSphere. It's a plexiglass from Plastique Fantastique, which that's a great name for a company.
It
And
And
really
yeah,
is.
that just looks like straight up 1950s sci-fi era, like space helmet. Just a big plastic ball you put
Bubble.
over your head.
And that
No,
one's
that's
open
right.
source.
one-
It's an open source project. Everybody can produce, develop, and improve their goldfish bowl they put over top of their head. And this will all be in the
Mm.
show notes for everybody who's curious about the pictures.
The only thing with the article that made me laugh was at the beginning of it, where they talked about a year ago they would have called you crazy. Today, wearing a modified space helmet on an airplane or subway makes you the person to envy. No, it doesn't.
No, I don't think it
No,
does.
not
I don't
Not
think
at
it-
all. I'm sorry. Nope.
I feel like
not
NASA
there
missed NASA missed an opening somewhere though on marketing proper environmentally conscious space helmets, or SpaceX missed an opportunity. Like, we need our heads in bubbles on Earth now, and they should have been the first ones that are like, we know how to do that. We can create
Right.
safe helmets for you to wear that will provide oxygen filtered. Like, Elon Musk could have woke up one morning and just been like, F it, let's make some space helmets for Earth.
I made that
And-
ridiculous looking truck. Why not? These are
Yeah,
no
or-
less ridiculous.
Exactly. Could have just put them to work, been fine. Tracking
I got a buddy
COVID
of mine
with
who
phones.
loves that truck, by the way. I mean, he wants it. He's like, give me the truck. I'm like, damn it. Please just go back
Oh,
and crawl back.
All it is a low polygon count PS1 era truck.
I rendered this with my Voodoo 3. Boy, that's going back. Tracking COVID with phones. 4 months after Apple and Google announced an unusual collaboration to help public health authorities track the novel coronavirus, apps built on their privacy optimized exposure notification framework have begun arriving in the U.S. The first is Virginia's COVIDwise, debuting on August 5th. North Dakota and Wyoming shipped their Care 19 alert August 13th. Alabama launched its GuideSafe app on August 17th. Nevada introduced COVID Trace on Monday. The University of Arizona is testing COVID Watch Arizona with a statewide release expected soon. I'm actually kind of intrigued by the states that are in this list. Alabama's not one I would have figured would have an app out the door this quickly. Like, No, but well done, home state of Alabama. They work by sharing anonymous Bluetooth beacons with nearby devices running the same software, tagging those that suggest extended and close contact associated with coronavirus spread, and saving the last 14 days of these records. A positive test for COVID 19 in one of those states should include a code you enter into the app to upload its close contact records to a health authority server that then makes this anonymized data available to all these apps on their daily check ins. If the app sees one of these reports matched its saved list of close contacts, it warns of possible exposure and advises testing and quarantine. Virginia's Health Department Department of Health reported that as of August 19th, 397,914 people had downloaded COVIDwise, more than 10% of all state smartphone users between 18 and 65. As of August 18th, 19 people had anonymously reported positive test results, but the department did not have a number for the number of exposure warnings sent to app users. That feels like that'd be a good metric to have to determine if this was working. Emily Gurley, an epidemiologist with Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health in Baltimore, noted that these apps' automatic estimates of close contacts ignore such nuances as whether a person was indoors or outdoors. These apps also don't necessarily work across state lines, but help is coming from a nationwide server initiative launched by the Association of Public Health Laboratories, a Silver Spring, Maryland group. North Dakota and Wyoming's Care 19 app already uses it, and Virginia's COVIDwise will soon, said Jeff Stover, Virginia's Department of Health Executive Program Advisor. I cannot imagine a better solution to this than what they've got. And at some point, does indoor and outdoor really matter if you're just trying to get a bead on whether you were near somebody or not? And if you were near somebody for an extended point of time, indoor or outdoor, I'd still want to be aware. And then there's so much free testing, be worth going to make sure you're good. But obviously, there's a lot of implications to this whole thing. But I find it an interesting implementation. It's my Bluetooth talking to your Bluetooth. We're together. It's gonna send up you got a UUID for your name or your phone, and then that universally unique ID tells other people you were around them when you get test positive. Pretty neat. Pretty neat stuff.
Yeah.
You know what's not neat? Men's clothing, apparently. Men's clothing won't sell. Multiple high-profile bankruptcies are changing the face of the men's clothing industry. The parent company of Men's Warehouse and Joseph A. Banks filed bankruptcy in August, and Brooks Brothers filed back in July. Other companies specializing in business in formal attire, including women-centered brands such as Ann Taylor, Loft, Lord & Taylor, they've all suffered the similar fate of the steep drop-off. The industry hit rock bottom in April at 12% of January sales after adjusted seasonal variations. 12%. Holy crap. I didn't realize it was that bad. By June, it had clawed its way back all the way up to 38% of its original sales, as the U.S. Census Bureau. Most retailers agree that the shutdowns and a shift to work at home are partly to blame for the drop, but men's clothing stores, which tend to specialize in formal and work attire, have been fighting to make up for the drop in business clients for years, as often offices have become more casual. Men's clothing is directly tied to the health of a broader economy. Demand for men's clothes rise with employment rate because many jobs still require men to wear either formal attire and or casual attire at work. In other words, a strong macroeconomic conditions over the last 5 years have propped up the industry, despite increased competition from online retailers and a shift toward a more casual attire at the office. These companies are struggling, man. Damn.
Quick question for you guys. When's the last time you shopped at a men's store for menswear?
3 weeks ago.
Really?
For menswear, probably 2-3 years ago.
I can't tell you the last time I shopped at a menswear store. Never shopped at a Joseph A. Bank. The closest I ever got was the men's section at Dillard's. That was about it. Otherwise, I buy polos from Old Navy, man. Like I don't do it.
I mean, that's usually what I do, but I would occasionally go to, there's a locally owned store here that I actually worked at in high school for a little while. So if I need like really nice menswear, I would go there because I know the people and they'll do the tailoring and all that if we need it. But yeah, I mean, my office dress code is non-existent. So
Yeah.
And my office when I had to go in was very lax anyway. Like there were a few polo shirts, but you barely ever saw anybody in a shirt and tie unless we knew somebody was showing up. So
Yeah.
I
I
can
could
see that.
wear, a polo from Old Navy and J.C. Penney's khakis, and I'd never have to shop at a menswear store for any job I've ever had. But I mean, and I wonder how much of this is like, yeah, sure, COVID's taking you down, but were you already declining because the shape of work is modified a little bit to where a lot of jobs exist for dudes, it's even white collar, that doesn't need a menswear tailored suit kind of store.
No, absolutely. That it's
Interesting.
been a trend for years now. It was starting when I was working at that men's store in high school. We
Yeah.
saw a change,
Right.
and it's just been going down. Now it just fell off the cliff.
Yeah, right.
Well, I think men are starting to become more comfortable in their t-shirts and khaki, or not even khakis, just blue jeans. I mean, they before the well-dressed man, you looked at him and said, "Man, that guy's got his shit together,"
Yeah.
and you still do. If you see
Yes.
a very well-dressed man in a tailored suit with a vest that just looks like gold, I mean, you look at him and go, "Wow, that's a guy's got his shit together." But now I just don't think too many people want to pursue that.
No,
There's
and if
enough
more of these,
ability to be mid-range, like
Mhm.
looking nice but not like dressed to the nines. You're just it's like, "Oh, that guy looks decently put together." Is
Mhm.
passing now. Like that's enough. And I think with some of that deeper conversation, but some of that might be the late stage leaving your adolescence behind. We've moved into more of like you're nearly 30 before you stop acting like a frat boy.
True.
Before you nail it down. But yeah, I'm sorry, Travis. I was stepping on you there.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if more of these men's stores would carry kilts, I would shop at them more.
There you
Because honestly,
go.
the last time I went out of my way to dress up, I wore my kilt and a nice white button-up shirt and a vest,
Oh, you
and
went full Scottish
and
over there,
Yeah.
huh?
I went, and it was for a friend of mine's birthday. And I tell you what, I felt great, and I got nothing but compliments the whole night. But
Mhm.
I need more like business casual kilt, and for that to
So,
be more widely accepted,
There
so
you go.
like dinner parties for the Highland Games is what you're after.
a little bit, yeah, yeah.
Mm,
Yes.
okay.
I can see Travis tossing a caber.
I
See
could.
that.
I really could. That would
Yeah.
be all you, man.
Sporting event that started with a drunken bet. Please
Love it.
remain calm while the robot swabs your nose. If you've been tested for COVID 19, then you're probably experiencing the unpleasantness of a nasal swab. I have not. I don't know if either of you have, but
Mm.
I've seen it, and that's uncomfortable enough. Well, someone takes a long handled cotton swab, sticks it in your nose, way in your nose, until it reaches essentially your brain, and they swirl it around in there in the mucus cave, get some stuff. Well, what's more unsettling is to see that done by a robot. And there's a company from Taiwan, Taiwanese medtech startup Brain Navi, which has created an autonomous robotic arm that will swab your nose for a COVID test. So, to begin the procedure, the patient dons a nasal clip that the machine uses to orient itself. Already, I'm unsettled. They put their head in a metal bracket like you'd use for an eye exam. And I saw this, and I love gripping the handlebars like you're riding the world's worst roller coaster is apparently optional. But man, that like those things are already uncomfortable when I'm just resting there with like a light shining in my eye. And now I've got a robot arm with what looks like perspective wise about a 6 foot cotton swab. A depth sensing camera scans the face to measure the distance from nostril to ear canal, which Brain Navi says is a reliable proxy for the depth of your nasal cavity. Just think about that for a second. From your nostril to your ear canal is about how deep your nasal cavity is.
Wow.
Yeah. You,
About how deep? Am I comfortable with that about
yeah,
clarification?
so there's part of it right there. But the robot retrieves the cotton swab, and it moves agonizingly slow. There's a video on the web page that
Please
shows
watch
this
it.
happening to a guy, and watch the video, because I promise you, as bad as this sounds, and when Jacob put the article in our chat, my initial reaction was no. And he's like, "Did you watch the video?" I haven't yet, but I've seen this movie before. And then I watched the video, and my initial reaction was, it's worse, because that cotton swab, it's just slowly moving towards your face, and then it like gets into your nose and it adjusts its angle and then it keeps moving. And I just no, I don't care. I don't want that. I know it's probably more efficient and I'm sure it's much safer because you don't have to have a person there. But for right now, not when you're using depth sensing cameras, and should be okay because it even says in the article, well, if it gets too deep or something like that, you can back away from it.
Yeah.
Right, but you're not going to back away. Like, what happens if you don't back away straight, or it tickles something and you flinch? Like,
Yeah.
I
You
don't
end
know.
up with a cotton swab in your brain. No, it's got to have some kind of feedback mechanism where whenever it actually meets resistance, it stops. So I'm
Just
sure they
jams through
put
the
some
back
kind
of
of
your
safety
head.
mechanism on there. And by the way, so real quickly, a big shout out to Adam of Geekheim. This is definitely a Geekheim article, and thank you for sending this to me. I think you sent it to me earlier, either today or sometime this week. But yeah, thanks, Adam, for supplying us with this wonderful content.
This is basically HAL
and
9000. Like, check it out. Like, hold still while I penetrate you, Dave.
even the founder of the company, who was the first person to have it done to him, was terrified when he had
gosh.
it done.
Yeah, the
And this
first
is the guy
person
who's
was not
like
a
basically
volunteer.
responsible for it.
They were like, sit your butt down in this seat, and I'm going to drive this robot deep into your nasal cavity. Thank you for the cheers, Kelly Colby.
The video is 2 minutes. The video is just under 2 minutes long, but it felt like about an hour watching it because I'm picturing this guy and he's got that, the metal thing and he's holding on to it and he's got the little clip on his nose. And like, if that's me, I'm just clenched the entire
Yes.
time,
Oh, yeah.
terrified. I'm white knuckling that thing. And, I mean, no.
My sister had to get tested, and she did say, she's like, I tasted blood for like 2 hours, like after getting it done, because they just shove it so far back in your face. She was just like, it was horribly painful, and it did not feel good. And I can't imagine that being slower than what a normal human does. Like, a doctor knows how far, and they've got to, they don't have to sit there and like calculate. Whoo, boy, that is an adventure. But hey, it's coming to a CVS near you. It's going to be like the blood pressure cuffs sitting right next to it. You can just go plop down and have your nose swabbed.
Right inside the door.
Yeah,
COVID swabs here.
Get a swab. It'll tell you in 10 minutes. Dude, is that our future? Like, are we going to see more disease testing type apparatuses like this? This is like popping the cork on the wine bottle for some companies. Like, y'all, we got automated systems just like the blood pressure cuff at Walmart to do this stuff. Dr. Scholl's put let me test your feet booths in the pharmacy area, so you could buy the right Dr. Scholl's. This could be that next step. Nasal swabs on demand.
I just wish that it could be more like what we see in TV. And I know that's never fully accurate, but just a cheek swab and that's all you need.
Yeah.
Like that, I could deal with. I don't need 6-foot cotton swabs shoved into my brain and stirred around.
Right. I like how TV, sure, it's a cotton swab in your cheek, but it's also injections go directly into the neck. In every
Right.
television show or movie,
Oh, yeah.
you did. My wife, she's a pharmacist. She flips out. She's like, "That is not where you inject people with anything." People are like,
Nothing.
Nothing gets injected into a neck ever for any reason.
I mean, even overdoses, you don't even go
No.
there. You just go straight to the heart.
Yeah, nobody does that. But in every movie, in every TV show, there's always a neck injection when it happens. Gonna poke you directly in the side of the face. That's pretty great. Well, let's do a little bit of deep diving while we still have some time. We wanted to cover movie theaters because TV's Travis seems to indicate in your name that you are a movie, TV, cinema, media aficionado. And you have thoughts.
And real quickly, for everybody who doesn't know, he does host a podcast every Sunday night that deals with these movies that people haven't seen. So he's all about the deep dives into movies. So go ahead, Stephen. Sorry.
No, it's great. Yeah. So I wanted to cover the movie theater situation because we've seen Bill and Ted open last week and as one of the more prominent films to hit theaters in select cities. Tenet's opening this week after opening overseas first, which is completely bonkers for U.S.
I know.
movie and entertainment operations. So, how are we feeling about movie theaters, Travis? What are your thoughts on this whole scenario?
So I come down firmly on the fence with movie theaters, and here's why. I have been thinking about, because my local theater opened up last week, and I have been thinking it's an AMC, and I had the Stubbs A list before that, where I spend $20 a month and I can go to 3 movies a week. And I used it. I used it a lot right up until quarantine hit. I'd go see stuff that I normally wouldn't have seen in a theater and all of that. Well, I'm thinking about doing it again, but the only reason that I am is because, like I mentioned earlier, it's a fairly rural area. It's not super densely populated. So it's easier for there to be space in a theater. It's easier for them to have the time to clean said theater. And I think they're doing sort of similar to what you had mentioned with the hotels, where they're kind of rotating theater usage. I don't know exactly, but I feel fairly comfortable. Again, I take my own proper precautions. I hope that everyone else does. But if I go and I'm not feeling like they're doing what they need to be doing, I'll turn around and leave. However, if I lived anywhere that was more densely populated than here, not a chance I'd be doing it. So I can see in larger cities, in densely populated areas, theaters are just a bad place to go in general, for cleanliness. And in a situation like this, it's going to be that much worse. So again, I kind of come down on the fence with it. I also think we're going to see an increase in drive-in theater, at least in places that can keep them open longer, because that's a great way to sit. Yeah, I've seen drive-in concerts lately, and they seem to be going fairly well. I know on TMS they were talking about one the other day that Scott Johnson had gone to, and I think the theater going experience for the most part is a fairly insular thing. When you're not going to opening night of Tenet or The Dark Knight, when I went to that and it was packed to the rafters, because for the most part you get in, you sit down, and that's it. But I think that um, the hard part is things like concessions,
Yeah.
because you got people handling your cup and then putting ice in it, and they're putting drink in it, and I don't like the standards for keeping that stuff clean is slightly less than your normal restaurant already. And on a busy night, it's worse. So, not that I think we're ever going to see theaters go back to the way that they were. I really think the trend and the new normal in that is going to be, it's going to be more the special event. It's going to be the tentpole movies. You'll see a few of those, but you're going to see a lot more stuff coming out digital at home on demand, which was already trending in that way anyway. So these big multiplexes, you're not going to see those in the future. You're going to see more of 4 or 5 screens maximum type of stuff. That's my thought on it anyway.
Do you think movie theaters are going to move to letting people take their own concessions in? I know that that's a big area of concern for you. Do you think, have they mentioned anything about that?
They haven't mentioned it here. In fact, I just saw shortly before we went live, there was something from AMC about the way they're handling stuff, and I didn't get a chance to read it. It would be smart for them to do, but I also know that a large part of a movie theater's income is the
Revenue,
concessions,
yeah.
because they
Yep.
get they just get put over a barrel with the movies. They have to spend so much money to show the movies. And even we have a local theater that's like an art house, and they show the small stuff that gets limited release we get here. And even them, like, it's all volunteer run, and about the only revenue they get in is a little bit from ticket sales, but it's almost all from the popcorn and the candy.
And when you got these juggernaut producers nowadays, like Disney can argue up one way and down the other how much money they want from the box office take,
Mhm.
and the movie
Yeah.
theaters are basically powerless against it. And now that we've pulled the Paramount rules, thank you, the court system. Like Disney can just straight up be like, well, we're just gonna buy AMC and show Disney films, and then we get all the money all the time. It's that's a fiasco. But that's beyond the scope of this conversation. But yeah, like your own concessions, we've all done it. We've all gone to the dollar store and loaded up on Skittles and snuck them in mom's purse or wife's purse or whatever. But that's their money, man. And that's why a lot of these places have tried to refine the experience. Started selling beer,
Mhm.
started selling
Yep.
chicken wings, started selling like more high quality food. But my problem is, like Travis was saying, the concessions is how many times you've gone up to the counter and been confronted with a mouth breathing high schooler who barely had a functioning brain cell getting your popcorn and drinks. I don't trust
So
him.
I'm 100% with you here, but I guess the question I have is, you go to Alamo Draft House and you go for the experience. You don't necessarily go just to see opening night of Tenet at Alamo Draft House. You go to see the movie that you've been waiting for. It's like Quentin Tarantino or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or something like that. That
Mhm.
that you go to that theater for that experience, and they have something a little bit different because obviously
They're
they
a
sell beer,
restaurant.
they sell anything that you want from a restaurant perspective. They also serve the popcorn and the candy and all of that as well. Do you feel more comfortable at a place that does that and has servers come around to you and actually hand you the food, as opposed to you going to a counter with a high school kid behind a counter and just shoveling popcorn into a bowl and handing it to you?
In general,
I will say
yes.
yes, I do because Alamo Draft House is a restaurant that happens to have a big screen and shows a movie. That's what
They
Alamo
serve
Draft House
really
is.
good food too. Royale with
Yeah.
cheese, baby.
Whereas my local AMC is a bunch of movie screens, and oh yeah, we've got a nacho. They do have food, but it's not the same type of a situation. So I would feel more comfortable at something like an Alamo Draft House. Um, and that's one of the things I'm going to be concerned with when I do decide if I'm going to risk going back to the theaters. I was the guy that would buy the popcorn bucket, the annual one you get for $20 or $25, and then you can refill it for cheap because I love popcorn. So,
Oh, me too.
I would
Don't get me
take that
started with
from
that.
that
Hmm.
thing and all of that. So, I'm just, I don't know. Like I said, if I didn't live where I do, not a chance I'd even be thinking about it. But I feel like I might be able to pull it off here. And I think some of it too is going to end up being somewhat generational because I grew up where still in an era where going to the movie theater was a big experience because the movie would come out. That was the only way you could see it for sometimes a year or more before you could watch it at home. And there wasn't as much of an option of things to watch at home. Kids growing up now and in the last 10, 12 years have had they're just filthy with options for entertainment that going to the movie theater becomes a chore when they can, a parent of somebody who's Sam's age right now, you can wait and say, well, we don't have to drag him to a theater to watch this where he's not going to sit still anyway, when he can watch it at home and not that long. So I do think some of it's going to be that generational thing
Yeah,
a
I,
little bit.
I, I think I'm less concerned about the concessions and stuff. I'm more concerned about just the fact of being indoor, breathing the air everyone else is breathing. If you remember the movie Outbreak, a great movie from back in the mid '90s, Dustin Hoffman at his finest. Uh, the reason that spread in that town is because the guy who had it first went to a movie theater and coughed all over everybody. So
Yeah.
there's your example from a completely fictional scenario, but there's something to it. You're sitting all in the same room and you can put some space between each other, but if I hear a sneeze or cough, i'm I'm gonna get up and go like, who did it? What are you positive? I nearly choked myself at the grocery store one day because I didn't want to cough after I'd accidentally swallowed some spit wrong. And I was like, if I cough,
Mhm.
everyone in this place is gonna want to like throw me out the window, and I can't. So
Oh
I'm like,
yeah. Yep, I worry about that. And that is a good concern because you are contained. Now, theaters are fairly open air, but
sure,
it's all the same air. It doesn't recirculate nearly as fast. So,
yeah.
if they had somewhere where they could create maybe we'll see new theaters where everything is like these little pods. And so you can have a little pod that you sit inside of and watch stuff and you're quarantined off. Who knows?
Well,
Yeah.
Um
if I go to my
Well,
movie theater with my eye sphere on, I'm not worried about nothing.
that's
that's
right,
true.
baby. Your big plexiglass giant helmet that you got on. No, I mean Steven, you saw Bill and Ted this weekend, right? I mean,
Yes.
you saw opening weekend of Bill and Ted. They streamed it. You rented it. Uh, was the experience
Oh
that
gosh.
much different? And do you think that this might actually have legs to be streaming this?
I would have given anything to see Bill and Ted in the movie theater at Alamo. Because I think you and I have kind of defined our movie going experience. I'm either seeing it in IMAX because it's a big tentpole deal and I'm going to pay that premium to watch on that big old screen with that sound, or I'm going to go to Alamo and have me a tasty burger and a milkshake and watch it on a smaller screen. So there's two movies I want to see. I want to see IMAX movie, Avengers level, or I want to see Bill and Ted at the Alamo. But I wanted to see Bill and Ted at the Alamo because I wanted the focus. I wanted the lack of distractions around me. I didn't want to be able to pause it and get up and go do something else. I wanted to immerse. But you and I grew up in movie theaters as practically church. It's a sanctuary of content that I'm just like, I'm in it. Once it comes on, I don't want to hear anything around me. I want to focus, and home doesn't let me do that. Now, there are plenty of movies they're more what I would call like a talkie movie that I don't need to go see. Denzel Washington's Flight comes to mind for some reason. Like, that was a great movie, but it wasn't a theater movie. So I think you start to have to categorize films. Like Tenet's an IMAX flick. I want to see that in IMAX. I'm not going to get an opportunity to. Mulan.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
I'm going to have to see it in my house when it comes out because Christopher Nolan's a stubborn butt. And I could go up and see Travis and go watch it in rural Michigan.
You bring up a good point though on the different types of movies because I just recently watched the Jay and Silent Bob reboot.
Right.
And I loved it. It was great. I watched it at home, sitting on my couch. Honestly, the experience of that. Now, granted, I have fewer distractions in my house because the only thing to distract me is the little ball of fur sitting in the corner here. But seeing that movie at home on my couch, is a very similar experience to going to an Alamo Drafthouse or a theater to watch that movie because it's about talking. And I'm the same way as you are. The movie theater was that was the cathedral.
Yeah.
That you would go to, the movie palace. But certain movies benefit from the experience of sitting in a theater. Tenet or Avengers, those big tentpole movies, these big action pieces where it's the visual and the sound is different. Seeing Star Wars, whichever one of them you want to talk about, on a big screen, and I've seen all 9, is a totally different experience than seeing them at home, no matter how good of a theater room you have set up. And my dad has a room in his basement that is a theater. He has leveled, tiered seating and the ability to turn the lighting down and everything. And it's still a different experience doing that than it is going into a theater. So, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, it's just
so I'm struggling with your Jay and Silent Bob reboot because Steven and I went to the Carolina Theater, which is just this old-timey, old hole-in-the-wall theater. And we watched it with Kevin Smith in-house, and we got the question and answer session, and it was a completely different experience than sitting in your home watching that. And it was so much different.
But there's the difference. You got to see it in that setting with a Q&A and with the director there. If I had the opportunity for that, 10 out of 10 times I'm doing that.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I've been able to do that with our local film festival and some other kind of stuff that I've been involved in. So yeah, that's different. I didn't have that opportunity. He didn't bring that tour anywhere near me. So the only way I was going to see this movie was either going to be in some sort of a limited run or at home. And being able to just see the movie and have it at home, Bill and Ted would be a similar one to me. Like, yes, if I don't have an Alamo Drafthouse here. I don't have anything like that. We have an AMC theater and we have a local one called the State Theater. So for me, Bill and Ted, if I could go see it at the State Theater, that'd be great. But I'm not going to go out of my way for it because it's a Bill and Ted movie. I don't need that.
Yeah.
But
and it depends on your emotional response. Like to a movie, like for me, Bill and Ted's very nostalgic, and it was something I was like, I've been looking forward to since they said they were making it, like 10 years ago when they initially announced we're writing it. I'm like, holy crap, a Bill and Ted movie, that's amazing. And I don't know why I'm so latched onto them. It's something about the childlike optimism that story over the course of 3 movies carries. But I was like, I'm gonna see that when it comes out. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna support it. I'm gonna be like part of it. There's an inclusion factor of seeing a movie at release in a theater that you don't get. Like, I enjoyed the crap out of Birds of Prey. I watched it across 2 evenings on HBO Max, and I enjoyed the crap out of it. And I was looking back like, man, I didn't go see that because I was expecting it to not be good. But it's funny because I still got the same enjoyment watching it over two
Hmm.
nights. And I'll sit here and say, like, all movies need to be in the theater. But then when I look at movies I did watch at home, I'm like, I got a lot out of that. That was good. I still enjoy Bill and Ted. I wish I could have seen it on a theater. And maybe there's some weird separation in that. It's like it's theater requirement, maybe not. But I do enjoy it. And I enjoy the activity of picking you up, Jacob, and driving over to the
Mhm.
movie theater and having our beer before we go in and having the popcorn, and there's ceremony to it. It's like
Yeah.
it's like you watch your church at home, or you can go in and shake hands and see people, and
Yeah,
be
it's very much a pomp and circumstance type of thing where there's ritual's a great way to put it.
yeah,
Ritual of going to the theater. And that's where I kind of think we're going to see a change over the next 10 years because for you or I or Jacob, there's that ritual there. We grew up with that. We're used to
yeah,
that. Sam's not going to have that same type of situation. Even if there wasn't COVID, he probably wasn't going to have the same kind of upbringing when it came to movies. And
yeah,
now what we're going to see is we're going to see more stuff like Mulan, which is getting released on Disney Plus, and Bill and Ted, which is getting released the way it is. And you're going to see more of that where stuff is just more readily accessible. And then what I look at it as you have options. So you can, as theaters start to open back up, you have the ability to, if it is taken care of properly and if you feel comfortable with it, you can go do that. Or you can rent it or buy it day of, like you did with Bill and Ted. Or if it's something, if you're not a Bill and Ted fan, wait a few months. It'll be available somewhere else, either cheaper or on one of the streaming services. So it gives you more options.
So, I still have a question. There are so many questions that I have about this, but I guess my main question is: if you, as a Bill and Ted fan, rent it and watch it, stream it on opening weekend in your home, and then 6 months later it comes out in theaters, chances are you're probably not the one that's going to go back and go to the theater and watch this. So, when thinking about who makes the decisions to actually stream it as opposed to put it in the movie theater, who do we feel like is trustworthy enough to make those decisions for any given movie? Like Bill and Ted, maybe it's better streaming. Maybe it shouldn't be released in the theaters. Tenet, maybe it should be released in the theaters and it shouldn't be allowed to be streamed until 6 months in. So, who do we feel like should be making those decisions?
I mean, at the end of the day, the studios have the full rights to figure out how to distribute that movie. Like Christopher Nolan's got a lot of clout as a
Yeah.
director who holds fast to film and to the theater experience. Him, Scorsese, Spielberg, these old school guys, like that's the way they expect their art to be displayed. And I think that you have to take into account for that. Like you wouldn't be like, "Hi, Rene Marguerite, we're gonna be putting your painting on an iPhone and handing it to
That's right.
everybody." Like he'd be like, "F you, you're gonna put that canvas in the museum,
Mhm.
or at the gallery or whatever." Like, and I think you have to look at it from that perspective. These are artists putting together a work of writing and visual and audio experience that they have in their head how they want it seen. And some
Mhm.
people, it's more like this was a fun flick to make, and I would love as many people to see it as possible on day one. And COVID, or not COVID, just I want it accessible to people. Movies are fine. Then there's people that are like, my thing is a work of freaking art, and I want it in a movie theater. It depends.
So I feel like that is an unbelievably pre-COVID perspective. And it hasn't been updated to our current reality. Because if we're only going to have limited release, if you're only going to be able to see, if there's only going to be 10 people in a given theater, they're not going to be able to put the 250
Right.
people in there. They're never going to be able to get the heads in there. So all of a sudden, the Christopher Nolans of the world are going to have to realize that their vision is not going to be a money making venture.
Yeah.
Therefore, they've got to try to figure out some other way. And yes, I agree with you. This is my art. This is how I want it to be seen. but I feel like there needs to be at least some balance there with not only monetary but also experience as well, to allow other people to experience it in different ways. So
Studios
I
got to
guess I'm
get their
trying to
money back.
understand, what do we feel comfortable with here? Not only for the artists who want it to be seen the way they do, but also for the consumers who are paying money for this, who want to experience it in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, in the words of the almighty Weezer, the world has turned and left me here. In for Christopher Nolan, like, I mean, the world turned and he stayed where he is and only made 53 million overseas on opening weekend for Tenet, above what they projected, but remarkably below the budget of that film. And that was overseas, and I don't know that they were expecting it to do great anyway. Bring it to the U.S. where theaters are still half closed. You're right. Get 10 people in a theater at a time. It's not going to make his money back, and the studio's got to get paid. I know they love their directors, and I say we stand by you, but at the end of the day, the movie industry runs on dollar bills. And they'll make it.
Directors want to make movies, studios want to make money.
Mhm.
So studios are going to figure out what's more interesting to me from a business standpoint are going to be films that were already in production and the way those contracts are structured. How are those going to play out? Because there
Yeah.
are a lot of those have contracts where they have to have a theatrical release.
Mm-hmm.
I remember covering Idiocracy for my show a while back, and that movie had a horrendously bad box office because it was in the contract Mike Judge had that his movie would be released in theaters. Fox did not want to put the movie out at all, but they had to. So they put it out in the fewest number of screens they possibly could, and they didn't release it in New York and all this kind of stuff. So I'm really curious to see how that goes, given that contracts are already in place, and how is that going to shake out? Because I don't know, it's a weird thing, and I don't know who should be making those decisions on what goes where. Because for every Christopher Nolan or Steven Spielberg there is that has the clout and is an auteur and wants to have their thing shown on a movie screen, you'll have a Kevin Smith who probably doesn't care. He's just gonna, I just want people to see my movie. And then you'll have somebody who wants to be that, Christopher Nolan, but doesn't have the clout. So he's not going to get his movie shown the way that he wants it to be shown. So he's got to compromise his vision or her vision. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing because it is this mixture of art and business that a lot of people forget that there's both sides of that.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got the consumer who also wants the experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to go to Alamo to be able to watch these type of movies in this kind of way. I want to be able to go to the IMAX to watch a movie in this kind of way. I want to be able to sit in the comfort of my own home and watch the movie in this kind of way. So you can't divorce the consumer from that argument.
Yeah, it's
I
definitely a
theater
triforce.
in the dark and eat all my popcorn before the trailers are done.
Yes.
Oh yeah, they go back for a refill.
Yeah.
Guilty.
And to be like, we've spent so much money. I say we, but the movie theater industry has spent so much money trying to get us into that place. They have upgraded to recliners. They started it was a West Coast thing for a long time, but now East Coast, we're doing reservations for your seats. They've introduced wine and beer, like I was saying, chicken wings and stuff. They're doing everything they can to get us in the door. I mean, they sacrifice number of ticket sales to put recliners in. Less recliners fit than the old school seats, but they did it because they need people to come in, and now people are coming in. It's like they already knew they were dying. They figured out ways maybe they could pull some people in. I mean, I really was, Travis. I know you said Sam's upbringing might not be the same, and you're right because he has so much more content available at his time when he wants it at home. But I was still taking him to movies. Like we went to see The Grinch. We went to see Dora the Explorer. I was trying to introduce him to the concept of movie culture and like how much fun it is to go to a theater and drive home that point. So he and I could sneak him out of school one day. I'm like, we're gonna go see a movie.
Oh yeah.
And I can't guarantee that'll hook. He might just be like, movies, man, and that's fine. That's his thing. I'm gonna steal Jacob's kid and take him instead. See how he likes it.
That's right.
Well, and I wonder how much of that, like, you do that. I assume that was something maybe that you had from your childhood.
My dad took me to movies a lot. Yeah.
So my dad and I did the same thing, or my mom, it was a family thing.
Yeah.
And then it became a thing that I had like-minded friends, so we would go. That was our, in high school, I didn't party. It was Fridays and Saturday nights. We're going out to a movie, and then hanging out afterwards to talk about it. hence why I do what I do now. Like that was so you having that ingrained in you, you're going to do that, but the frequency with which you would do it with Sam, even in a perfect world, is going to be a lot less
It'll
than
be
it would
less,
have
yeah.
been. So he could, he would end up with sort of this idea of like, this is a special occasion thing, as opposed to like when you and I were kids, where it was like just about every Friday night I was at a movie theater.
Yeah, every couple weeks minimum, there was something coming out, particularly in the summer, that my mom or dad was like, let's go.
Mhm.
But looking at the newspaper on the way out the driveway to figure out what was playing,
Yeah.
and making sure that the times matched up.
Yes,
That's
you're
right.
like, oh, what's this? I don't even know
Getting
what this
to the
movie is.
multiplex and looking at all the options, and all right, we're gonna go see this movie, and it starts here. This one starts 15 minutes later, but
Yes,
it's shorter, so we'll all meet here afterwards. Like
right. And it was
that-
pre-YouTube, so you didn't even know what was in the movies unless you managed to catch a trailer. You're just like, I don't know, that one looks good. Let's go.
Mhm.
Thank you for calling Movie Phone. Yes, Zafo. Yes. Well, man, it's
Oh,
it sounds like we could all talk about movie. I didn't expect it to go as deep as it did, but it seems like this is a passionate point for all three of us to some degree, in trying to explore what the landscape of movies looks like moving forward. And I don't know that we're going to nail it down, even if you give us another hour to chat it out. But clearly, things are going to change. I think it's the synopsis is things are going to change, and we just got to hold on and see what that's going to look like. But I know we got to get to this guest prediction. Travis, can you bottle us up a quick prediction of the world of the future post-COVID?
I think
is that
we
what
need
you're
to
after, Jacob?
let's limit it. Let's limit it to the situation maybe in the next 3 months, because I don't want you to try to predict something that's 2 years out. Let's talk about
that changes my prediction greatly. So
Okay.
because my prediction was going to be about movie theaters, but I'll change
Okay.
it. I don't see movie theaters changing a whole lot in the next few months, just because half of them are still not going to be open. I do think if you want a prediction based on that, we're going to move away from the large multiplexes. We're going to get single and double screen, IMAX, and these things like our State Theater that I have here downtown, where it's showing event movies. I think is where theaters are going to go in the next 3 months or so. Boy, prediction wise, I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, we're primed for some big changes coming in November, one way or the other, and a lot of people are going to be entrenched in what they think is going to happen, and a lot of that ends up becoming perception becomes reality. So,
What about James Bond? What do you think is going to happen with the Bond flick in November?
so it's still slated for November, right?
It is.
Yep.
They actually moved
It
it
is.
up a week.
No. Current pace, I think it'll come out and it's going to not do as well as they hope it will, but it will do better than the naysayers think. So it'll sort of balance out, and in that, the only thing is like James Bond, I think is a bad example of a movie that could do well because it's been trending down. I think a better one would be Black Widow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
As
A
the next
Marvel.
Marvel movie to
Yeah.
come out, because how that does is going to determine a lot. It's the next Marvel movie, and I think there's only one or two other Marvel movies that are currently in production. And depending on how Black Widow does, could vastly change the way that even our tentpole movies are budgeted and shot. So I think between James Bond and Black Widow, what happens as far as theaters opening up and how many people are going to those theaters and how those movies do based off of initial projections and worst case scenario projections, I think is going to greatly change and influence the landscape of just filmmaking in general.
I
I
think
think
we
I think
we
the trend is
need
going to be I mean, I think the trend is going to be to more stuff like a Bill and Ted, where it's a smaller story, and hopefully they can what we can see is some more inventiveness in storytelling to get people excited for a movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I really need Black Widow to do well because we need more female led hero movies to do well. And I hope that when they look at the box office take of Black Widow, and if it is smaller than previous movies that were male superhero led or male directed, that they take that into account, that it's an anomaly and it's at a bad time. Because like
Right. They
Flippin'
definitely
Birds
should.
of Prey was great. It was directed by a female, it was written by a female, and it was starring a female cast that led it, and it was so good. It was so good, and it was necessary because a fight scene with a girl with her hair down, she gets given a hair tie to tie her hair back. And you tell me that a dude director would have even thought that in a second.
Not
Like,
not
it
at all. In fact,
never.
it would have been the opposite.
Stephanie Flippin
I
applauded. She saw that happen and she was like, "Did you see that?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "She got a hair tie. She tied her hair back. Nobody can fight with their hair in their face." And I'm like, "This means a lot to you." And she's like, "Yes." And I'm like, "Perspective. Thank you. This is beautiful, and we need more of it."
Yeah, and on
So
the opposite end of that, I saw an episode of Arrow where a female character with her hair tied up undid it to start a fight, this was after I had seen
Yeah.
Birds of Prey, and there was two parts to that. One, I was like, okay, it looks cool, but it doesn't make any sense. This other way makes so much more like practical sense. So
Yeah.
I do want to see more in that, and I'm really hoping that people temper how they view the numbers because Captain Marvel did gangbusters.
Right.
The people that were downplaying and naysaying something like Birds of Prey, or probably inevitably will with something like Black Widow, are going to make these predictions and these decisions before they've seen the material
Oh
to
yeah.
know anything.
They're set
They go
before
in
they
with
even
a
start. Yeah.
preconceived notion, but they're loud and they're obnoxious about it. So.
Exactly.
here's another prediction I have, or question prediction that I have for you.
Sure.
How much longer are we going to have on these Marvel and DC movies? I mean, I feel like we've just been inundated with every 3 months there's a new Marvel flick coming out for the last 5-6 years, and it's just we're wearing me out. When are we going to be done with Marvel?
We'll be done with Marvel when people stop going to theaters and stop paying money to see Marvel movies. Disney, if anyone knows anything about Disney, is that Disney will wring the blood from the stone.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They can make a buck off of something, they will. And Marvel movies and will continue to go. And what's going to happen is DC movies will continue to go because Warner Brothers wants to try and make that same Disney money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Warner Brothers
So,
needs to pull their head out of their butt and start making good DC movies more consistently. But yeah,
definitely.
you and Ashley have both alluded to Marvel exhaustion, and I don't
It
think
is,
I don't think
Jesus.
you're alone in that. But I think you're looking at more of a how many years did they make westerns? Like, I mean, really, you're talking about 30 years of cinema history is westerns. Because people went to see it. We're all superhero kids, man. We grew up with superheroes. The
Yeah.
30-year-old, 25 to 45-year-olds are knee deep in superheroes, always have been, and we're finally getting them represented in a way that we can jive with. And it's just like Grandpa watching his westerns. He's like, "Yes, I remember those days."
Well, what's going to happen is you're going to see a shift in the type of movie. So part of the Marvel exhaustion comes from every character is not the same, but it's all sort of a similar character. And what you're going to start seeing is a change in those characters and in the types of stories that they can tell, much like what's happened with comic books over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Comic
That's
books
probably true.
today have such a different story structure and different representation because of the people that are making the comics now from what they were in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and even in the 90s. The movies are going to follow a similar thing. So I think I can get the exhaustion part of it. I can get like another Marvel movie, and you feel because the way the Marvel Cinematic Universe is set up, it's not individual movies. They're episodes in a long series.
Mhm.
So because of that, you almost feel, if you're like me and you're a completionist, you feel like you
Yeah.
have to watch everything because otherwise you'll miss out on something.
Yeah.
And what you're going to see is, I think you'll start to see some changes and some fragmentation, and it can become more serialized and more like, well, if you don't catch the new Ant-Man movie, you're not missing anything, even if you see him pop up somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or, Black Panther is an interesting one now with what happened with Chadwick Boseman. How are they going to change that? Because what I don't want to see is them just completely recast it. But they've got a lot of changes to do because he was going to be a big part of this next phase.
There were already a lot of rumors that he wasn't going to return, and a lot of people were believing that was money based. I think Marvel was more in the loop of this possibility than we realized, or that they would even say. And I think they have contingencies for everything. We never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So they've got contingencies and plans for everything. I think Black Panther, one of the reasons we haven't really seen a Black Panther 2 advertisement is how's this going to develop? You know, and that, you can say it's kind of callous from a business perspective, but they got to know from a narrative too, like how are we going to handle all these different scenarios? And the Marvel movies, sure, they're exhausting, but they do try to make them stand. Like Ant-Man was a heist movie. Captain America was a 70s thriller. Like the Winter Soldier bit was a 70s thriller. You had Black Panther was a cultural commentary. So they try to but there's always the faceless enemy and the big get-togethers like, oh, look, we'll fight the mighty monster horde again.
Yes.
Some people had that problem with Endgame. They said they took this fully realized villain of Thanos and they reduced him to just another monster by the end of Endgame. Like, oh, he's not mature and now he's just ragey. We could dive into this. I'm gonna try not to.
Have you ever read a comic book? Like that's every comic book.
Yeah, they're all like that, and people like watching them. But yeah, there's.
So I'm not saying the movies are bad.
Right.
I'm just saying that I'm exhausted. Blacklist, great example. I will call you out on Blacklist.
Yes.
Blacklist is really quite entertaining. Of a television program, right?
Yep.
The problem is that it becomes unbelievably formulaic. I mean, you've got a group of people that sit around and they discuss what's coming next, and then you go out and fight some bad guys, and you get in a nearly impossible situation to get yourself out of, and then the guy comes in and saves a day, and then you find yourself putting the bad guy behind bars. Period. Yeah. In a discussion, or they die, one or the other, right? So it becomes very formulaic, and I'm not saying that they're all the same. They all tell different stories. They all have different things that they bring into it, but it still feels unbelievably formulaic, which is where I feel like Marvel ended up is I knew what was coming. I knew what to expect. I kind of had this is going to happen here and this is going to happen here. And they're going to make the characters so OP that they're just going to blow up a spaceship with their sheer force of their fist, which is ultimately what happened. Right. So, I mean, I don't know. It's almost like I'm exhausted with the formula of Marvel.
Yeah.
Right. And what you're going to see is the formula is going to start to evolve, because think of Disney animated films, right? Those were great, but they got very formulaic. Mm-hmm. What changed that? Pixar,
yeah, they had to go buy somebody to change it.
They did, but Pixar had a different thing going on, and they changed it up, and they upped the game. I think you'll see that with Marvel. I'm curious. I'm really interested to see the next Doctor Strange, how far into the horror genre they can go with that, because they're never going to stray too far. Disney
It'll always be PG-13. They'll never drive to an R, no matter how horror based they're going to get.
Honestly, PG-13 can be really scary. I've seen some PG-13 stuff that scared me more than any R-rated horror film ever. But what I want to see is an evolution of that, and move away from the strict formula and get a little more creative with it. And I think as they start bringing in different characters, you can do that. That's where something like Venom was a great experiment for Sony, because it's not a Spider-Man movie. It's Venom, and it's very different. Shazam was a great example of that in DC.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a different type of character from Superman or from Batman. And so, I want to see the formulas to these superhero movies evolve the way that the comics have over the years. Because you read comics from the 60s, they're so different from the way they are now.
Yeah, and oddly, Norman brings up Thor Ragnarok. That was way beyond what we'd seen before. It was still a battle against a bad guy. It was still stuff, but the style is what
Thor Ragnarok
brought you into that and made it feel fresh. And Thor was basically redefined with that movie, and that was because Marvel knows how to pick filmmakers. Marvel's done a really good job of James Gunn, like. He was doing weird horror crap before he got Guardians of the Galaxy. Slither was his biggest claim to fame. Nobody really, people knew he was a good guy. Taika Waititi did What We Do in the Shadows. It was a vampire comedy, and The Hunt for the Wilderpeople, which was like a New Zealand-based tale of a kid. And they were just like, this guy's got some style. Let's give him Ryan Coogler. Jacob, he did Creed, and they handed him Black Panther. They just know how to pick people. They don't have to pay a lot because they're still earning their keep. but they know they've got vision, and they drag them in and they say, like, how can we tailor this guy? How can we give him what he needs to make the movie he wants to make, but make it also
But make sure
fit?
it fit within this
Had to
specific
fit.
art.
Edgar
because
Wright,
if it
they
doesn't
tried,
fit within
yeah,
this art,
they tried to pull Edgar Wright in for Ant-Man, and they just realized along the way, Edgar Wright's got his own way he wants to do it, and he was like, I'm not going to change my story to fit your overarching thing. I want to make my story. So they had to toss him. But it was a mutual agreement. Your creative side, we want you to make this movie because you made Scott Pilgrim and it was epic. But you don't want to play nice with the series, so we're gonna go ahead and pass. But then they pull in guys.
Yeah, Scott Derrickson after doing Doctor Strange.
Yes,
and
yeah.
I really, really, really wanted to see his version of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Now they're bringing in Sam Raimi. I love Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
So I'm not upset that Sam Raimi is taking over. Derrickson has some really cool ideas. Him and Cargill writing that I wanted to see, and we're not going to. But it was a mutual thing, and
yeah.
So, I mean, that happens. Not every time the partnership is going to knock it out of the park. Not everything is going to be the Russo brothers coming from, was it Community? Is that what they worked on?
Community. And then they picked up Winter Soldier. Freaking best movie they made. And Cargill, for reference, also believes that zombies cannot climb. So thank you, Cargill, for being on the right side of that argument.
Already don't trust him.
We met him at Dragon Con, and he agreed with us. Romero, zombies cannot climb. But man, again, we could do this all night, you guys. We're going to continue down this spiral of talking movies, and we have got to get Jacob in bed because he's a new dad, newish dad, and he needs sleep. So we don't have any mail this week. We're going to have some new guests as the weeks coming. We're going to start doing some rotations. Travis, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you?
So you can find me every Sunday night on Twitch, twitch.tv/tvstravis, where I live stream and record my show, Wait, You Haven't Seen. And the hook on that one is it's movie discussions, which obviously I like to do. But every week, somebody that's on the show, whether it's my guest or one of my guests or me, never seen the movie before. So we're getting to see it for a first time. I also record Monday nights a show called Let's Watch Highlander with Oddly Normal One from the chat room. We are slogging through the first season as we get to the good stuff in Highlander the series, and we're watching every episode and discussing it.
That's glorious.
Yeah, it is. That show holds a special place in my heart. As bad as it can be at times, and boy, can it be bad.
That's excellent. That's excellent, Travis. Well, thank you for being on. And this Sunday, Jacob and I are actually going to be your guests.
That's right.
On Wait You Haven't Seen.
Because what's the movie that you haven't seen, Stephen?
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? I had not seen it, but I watched it last night while eating wings with Jacob. And I will not even say a word about it because I'm going to save that for Travis's show. Sunday night, twitch.tv/tvstravis. Travis, always a pleasure to be on a chat room with you, conversing about all things, whatever, because it's just a good time talking to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, and anytime.
You got it, man.
Nice.
We will have you back. Don't you worry. Next week, we're going to be joined by Kelly Lynn Colby, editor in charge of all the things that Two Dorks does literally literature wise. She is the editor of our Laundered series, which, by the way, just won second place in the North Texas book contest for short stories. So we are an award-winning, second place, but still award-winning book series, which is pretty fantastic. So we're going to have her on to talk about everything that's going on with COVID in her life down there in Texas. If you like the show, don't forget to give us a review. Reviews are awesome. They're a free way to give somebody some props in the podcasting world. You can do that on a ton of different services. Just check out whatever you listen to this on and slap 5 stars on there. Follow us on Twitter at Staring at Goats or Staring_Goats. Email us. We'd love to get your thoughts on anything we talked about here tonight or any other ideas that you have. StaringGoatsPodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to join us on Patreon, you can do that at patreon.com/2dorks. You can join the likes of Hammer Dwarf and Oddly Normal One and Adam of Geekheim, and who else is on our show? My parents, Ashley's parents. I know I'm forgetting someone. This
Hammer
is
Dwarf.
the tragedy of
Og.
not Og. I almost forgot Og. It's the tragedy of not writing it down. I need to just put that in our template. But yeah, you guys are awesome. Thanks for joining us on Staring at Goats. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bah.
Oh, Kelly's going to be on next week. That's awesome.
Yeah, Kelly's agreed to come and sit with us knuckleheads and talk. That was
She's
fun.
going to show us who's boss.
Get
Yeah.
a fresh